Boom, another episode of TTM Chat, and we got an amazing turntablist and producer in the house, and vocalist. I guess you're a vocalist as well. We've got ZSonic.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's dope.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm excited to have you here. So yeah, we're gonna start off. I want to start off with just asking you about, where your DJ journey began. Like what year, what inspired you to start, DJing, start scratching.
Yeah. So I was born in the 80s and I used to watch In Living Color. You know what I'm saying? They had DJ on there. And then they always had like hip hop artists on there, like Eric B and Rakim. And I love DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince when I was a kid. So I always loved DJing. I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, man, I want to be that DJ on In Living Color. I want to be the DJ on there. And that'd be so dope. And yeah, when in the 90s, I remember my grandma bought me this sound design stereo, and it was just like a stack, like a CD player, tape player, radio, record player, all stacked up, and it had these buttons on it where you could just
Mhm.
switch between vinyl, tape, CD, and if you held it down, it would like do more than one at the same time. So I could like have a CD on and then have a tape in there, and then press the buttons down, and then press the vinyl button on and off to like cut the record in and out. And
Wow.
so I could like record a tape and like scratch over beats off CDs and like scratch over like drum and bass mixes and stuff, just messing around. And that was super fun. And I was like, before that, I had also tried to play a lot of instruments. I tried to like harmonica, piano, bass, violin. I took various instrument lessons as a kid and I never stuck with one of them. But when I started playing with the turntable when I was a teenager, I was like, this is like, it could be any instrument. Like you could do so much with this. And my mind was just like, shh. And I got the Executioner's album
Hmm.
Expression on vinyl. And then I was like, that really like pushed my mind to a new level of what you could do with turntablism. And I was like, yeah, I bought all the hip hop CDs. I just started absorbing it as much as I could and got my first turntables when I was 17. And I used to stay home and like just mess on them and practicing so much that I ended up having to be a fifth year senior in high school because I would not go to class some day because I would just stay home and scratch and do some breakdancing too.
Dope,
And
dope. And
yeah.
what models were those? The first turntables, your first mixer.
Yeah, my very first thing was I saved up for a while and I bought it. It was only 200 bucks, but I had to save it for a while at the time. And it was a Gemini Battle Pack,
Ah,
like belt
I remember
drive
that.
turntables. It came with this video of like how to DJ. And I don't remember the DJ in there, but he was crazy, like jumping up on the table, like scratching on it on top of the table and doing crazy stuff on this video. It was pretty dope. But yeah, it was really like this fader was all stiff. It didn't really have, I think it might have had high and low EQ, but other than that, I didn't have anything on the mixer.
And those were
And
belt drive too, right?
belt drive, yep.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah, 'cause
got as much as I could on those, yeah.
yeah, I was in a Gemini battle actually, like around, the early 2000s. It was like a Gemini battle in New York somewhere, and it was like, they had those, those there. It feels like it was like belt drive, and I feel like Cutting Candy was there, maybe some other people were there. But yeah, yeah, it's wild, just the belt drive there and all that type of stuff. And I also wanted to ask you too, because I remember you were saying that I guess your father's from the UK, like you're both American and British citizenship. Like, how did that, affect your, musical upbringing and stuff like that? Because, it's just like here in America, DJ culture is not as popular, as in the UK and, Europe and stuff like that. I'm just curious.
Yeah. My dad was born in Scunthorpe, England, and his mom was also from England, but his dad was from New York and he was in the military. And so my dad lived in Germany as well for a while when he was a kid. And then he moved to America when he was in high school. So he actually went to high school in Belton, Missouri. Um, so he's mostly been an American for my whole life. But my grandma was very British, super British. And my dad was just in general, like I think he just as he is as a person more so than being British, just influenced me a lot because he just always listened to lots of different music. And he would go to parties, he would go to shows in different cities, and he traveled and he just knew a lot about a lot of music all over the world and was always playing different kinds of music. And yeah, I think he took probably got me into DJing and stuff, like taking me to DJ shows.
Oh,
Um, he's
what kind
always
of genres?
Yeah, my dad listens to everything, anything that's like new and more underground. You know, he likes world music. He likes hip hop a lot, like electronic music, drum and bass, techno, uh, all kind of world music, soul, R&B,
Did
like
he
every,
expose you to drum and bass? Because I know you make drum and bass tracks. Did he expose you or you exposed him?
he. So this was like 1993. He went to this rave in San Francisco, and he got this the CD called The Incredible Adventures of Flem Glover. And it was
Mhm.
like a promotional CD that was passed out at this rave, and it was actually later printed as an official CD called the San Francisco Rave Explosion.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
To me, is not as cool as The Incredible Adventures of Flem Glover, but also it's less weird. But but that's what got me into like rave music and electronic music. And that was 1993, so it wasn't quite drum and bass was a thing. But I remember we were babysitting. I was like 15 or 16, and he was babysitting for his friend, and his friend had a bunch of CDs, and there was a Goldie CD who's a drum and bass producer, and I was listening to all kind of stuff on my headphones. I used to walk around for hours with my Discman listening to stuff and a lot of hip hop. And I was looking at her CDs, and I started listening to this Goldie CD. I was like, dang, this is so dope. And I started getting into a lot of drum and bass then as well. And especially if you heard of Danny the Wild Child.
Yeah, uh-huh. I mean, I don't know his music that well, but I know the name.
Yeah, he's like I heard this CD from him, and he was scratching on drum and bass. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, scratching on drum and bass sounds crazy. I love that. And so I got hooked on drum and bass for when I was a teenager for sure. Started buying drum and bass records.
Dope. And are you, more in the drum and bass in, the, junglist in, or the breakcore in, or are you all three, or?
That's a good question, man. I love all that. Like I do love breakcore, and I have different vibes. I would probably say jungle. Like I
Hmm.
like jungle a lot, and I can always get down some jungle, and I think it's super fun to scratch to jungle. So if I had to pick one and say yeah, I'd say junglist.
Yeah, that's actually where I am because I like drum and bass, but I like chopped up breaks more than programmed kicks and snares and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
in the late '90s when I started getting into hearing Square Pusher and all that type of stuff, I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. I mean, and also even the early '90s when I heard, and I think I was a freshman in high school, like '93, '94 or something, and I remember I heard like a top 10, it was like, it was like a UK top hits type of a thing, but just the classic top raga jungle type of stuff. And I was just like, whoa, I couldn't even understand what was going on with the beat at first. I was like, because I just had never heard drums sped up like that. I was just like, whoa, this is just crazy to my ears. And it just sounded so crazy to me.
yeah, definitely. I love jungle too because the chopped up breaks and samples, and it could take influence from anything. Like you could take anything and make a jungle track with it. That's what attracts me to hip hop and jungle is like the sampling and being able to take influences just from anything and flip it.
Yeah, and that's what's the cool thing about, a lot of people don't see the connection between Steve D and backspinning and the funk and juggling and all that stuff and breakcore and jungle music because it's like he was doing that stuff in the late 80s and the way that he was cutting up the breaks, you know what I'm saying, people were sampling and looping breaks and re-editing breaks, Marley Marl and said G taught Marley Marl and stuff like that, but just really going crazy with it. You could say he's the real father of a lot of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And turntablism, spawns a lot of different genres, and I feel like turntablism doesn't get credit for a lot of the genres that it actually kind of spawns. And I've always noticed that the breakcore community and the junglist community and stuff like that is always like so people will scratch over stuff, but you don't see a lot of overlap. And I think for the future it'll be really great to see like rave rooms have a turntablist room or even just more fusion. Like I got a homie Basek. I don't know if you ever heard of Basek. You heard of
I,
Basek?
no,
He's
I
out of
think
LA and he's more on the kind of gabber kind of junglist end. So but he throws a lot of breaks in, but it's most of his stuff is kind of hard-banging techno, but fast gabber stuff. But he but he'll throw scratches in, and he'll do all types of crazy stuff. And so it's just there's people scratching over stuff, but you don't see a real integration in the communities. You know what I'm saying? But there's so many similarities because it's like when you see a Steve D set, and you see somebody just kill it on juggling and stuff with breaks primarily, not necessarily just juggling non-break stuff, but if somebody's juggling the almond break, and somebody's cutting up the almond break on their laptop, live or whatever on a PA set, it's like, those two crowds should obviously, be overlapping. So actually I'm going to be dropping some some breakcore type of records and stuff like that, vinyl records, and if you're open to it, I'm doing a whole series of me on one side, and other DJ on the other side, of dropping a whole series of skipless breaks. So if you ever want to
Yeah,
do a record together, just let me know, like a skipless breaks, a scratch record. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, that'd be super dope. Yeah, a lot of.
Yeah. So I've been wanting to interview you for a long, long time, and last year I was just super busy. I kind of paused everything. I wasn't doing a lot of TTM Academy stuff, and so I'm really, really psyched to finally get you here. And what's interesting is that what kind of sparked me pushing this interview even faster is that recently Qbert was announcing him dropping flashcards of his scratches, and I was like, oh my God, ZSonic, he was doing this years ago. And he released a whole series of TTM flashcards and DJ educational flashcards, and I forgot to add at the beginning of this interview that you're a very, very dope scratch composer as well. You know what I mean? Because there's millions of DJs out there, but there's only so many DJs that are actually literate. You know what I'm saying? And DJ literacy, in my opinion, can take your skills to a higher level. Being able to comprehend things and being able to teach others. So, you're also a DJ teacher. I
Mhm.
forgot to add that as well, at the beginning. So my question is, when were you first introduced to TTM notation, like the first time you saw it? And then we'll talk about your flashcards, and you can show us the flashcards and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the very first time I saw TTM notation. I was a member on the Qbert Scratch University
Uh,
from like 2012 to like 2016, I think it was.
nice.
I was on there for like 4 or 5 years. And that was pretty sweet. And I definitely knew about it. Like, I try to remember if I first found out from there or if it was a little bit before I started there from somewhere else. I don't know if I just saw it online somewhere or something, or if I saw Qbert doing it first.
Or any forums, like were you ever part of like digital vertigo or
No,
like
I was never on
oh
there. And yeah,
mm,
I've always been kind of like a like lone wolf, like in a scratch cave. Like I didn't know a lot of people, but which I'm trying to change that now. I want to get out there. So it was probably like, yeah, 2011, 2012.
mm.
It might, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember if there was a Scratch Con DVD where they talked about it.
Yeah, yeah, in ScratchCon, yeah, from ScratchCon 2000, the DVD talks about it. Yeah, yeah, I was actually at that show. It's funny they didn't let me get on stage when they gave me the award, but I got the DJ Qbert, I guess it was the Scratch Legendary Award. They had two awards that day. It was like the DJ Flair Scratch Innovator Award, and I think the guy that won it made this cool thing. It's like a little practice pad to like practice scratching on, like like a little arc of a vinyl record on like some felt, and you can like practice on it, practice your hand movements, faderless hand movements on it. And then I submitted my first book on TTM notation, the fundamentals, and my second book, and also because they had announced the contest in '99, and that was also part of me wanting to actually create a whole book and create a whole system, because I had ideas that was swimming with my head, but then I saw there was they were putting out a scholarship. So Qbert actually gave me $1,000 scholarship that day at ScratchCon, and I used that $1,000 to buy a '07 mixer that was $1,000. So I was, but yeah, that, so, Cubert's done so much for turntablism, outside of just his own music, but, as far as, creating that scratch con, and hopefully they do another one or something, or
So
other people can make scratch cons in the future. So that's really dope to see that you saw it at the scratch con, and then also you saw it at just through his university. So tell me more about the university. You were a member of the university, as in, did you have private lessons?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
So
so you're a student of DJ Qbert. That's really, really dope.
so it wasn't exactly like private lessons like me and
Oh,
Qbert on the same thing.
mm,
But it was you send in videos and he would give you direct feedback. And they would have like technique battles each month. I won a couple of those technique battles. That was pretty fun.
wow.
Um,
Yeah, I remember some of those battles because it was the first time I saw somebody doing really refined battles. Like, this is a stab battle. This is a flare battle. Or
I
so
love that
like those type of battles where it's like a specific scratch.
technique. Yeah, and he give you like a month. Like
Hmm.
everyone has a whole month to focus on practice this one technique, which was a beneficial thing to
Hmm.
focus on things. And then I really got a lot out of just seeing other people do it. And I think
Hmm.
that speaking to what you were saying about literacy,
Hmm.
so I started scratching like 2000 and I was probably super focused on it until like 2006. And then I got more into mixing, like house, techno, drum and bass. And I still scratch a little bit, but I didn't really like practice.
Hmm.
And I mean, about 2010, 2011, I was like wanting to focus on scratching again and getting a lot better at it. And I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I got kind of decent, but
Hmm.
I didn't know anything. Like one time this dude come up to me and party, and he was like, "Hey, you're pretty good. Can you do flares?" And I was like, "Is flare the one where you go like this?" I didn't know the name of,
Uh-huh.
I didn't know the names of anything. I didn't know notation or anything like that. I didn't, and I wasn't really that satisfied with how my scratching was coming along. I never got to a level that was like that I thought was cool. And then when I got back into it like 2010, 2011, and I discovered notation, that was really helpful. And I got really nerded out on that. And then speaking to that literacy, when like you know the name of a technique and
Hmm.
you notation, and then you practice that, and then you like do some kind of like I did my expression. I chose a beat. Everyone could choose their own beat. Do whatever you want to scratch, and it's
Hmm.
so cool to see like everyone doing something different with the same technique. And then
Hmm.
being it's just like when you have the notation in your head, it's like you can mentally associate all those different sounds. Like they could choose different samples of different beats, different rhythms with the same pattern, and you can associate all that with one notation, and you can understand how deep you can go with just like one technique. And you really like it's an interesting effect. Like scratching is infinite, and there's infinite patterns and infinite techniques, and
Exactly.
there's definitely practice to go big and think how much creativity, how creative you can be, and how many different things you can explore. And that's dope. And there's also a dope thing that happens when you focus really intently on like there's just like a little tiny piece, like you put your microscope on the on one little element, and you go zoom in as much as you can and focus as much as you can on one thing. And the technique battles I thought was really powerful for that because and maybe it was some kind of energy thing too. Like there's a whole group of people practicing the same technique and then submitting video, and then Qbert's watching it and he's giving everybody. He gave everybody feedback too, so you get to watch everybody's feedback, and then Qbert would give feedback, and it had like different feedback. Different people got different feedback, and
Hmm.
Qbert like, it did different things, and some people were more clean and efficient and effective than others, and so everyone got different feedback, even though it was all the same technique. So you just learned a lot about scratching by focusing on one technique is crazy. And then seeing everybody else have their expression, like, to me, is part of that literacy. It's like if I can watch someone else scratch, and if I can listen, like if I'm listening to scratches, and I can, oh, that's a chirp, oh, that's a stab. And when knowing those things and being able to like put a name on that, it helps me express more and be more confident. And so yeah, it's real dope. I like I like that QSU was dope. And yeah, I was on there for like 4 years,
Hmm.
and I submitted videos pretty regularly. Got a lot of feedback from Q.
That's dope, and it's too bad that it seems like this died down and they haven't yet, because I think I went to the Scratch University, Qbert Scratch University recently. I feel like it's only pre-recorded videos now, and he's not doing those battles or any of the community type of stuff anymore. So it'd be dope if that stuff were able to come back, whether it's through him or through somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's cool that you mentioned about, like biology and, dissecting and stuff, because that's what, I look at, DJs as scientists. And actually, I did a chart where I was comparing DJ sciences with kind of like general sciences that I don't know if you've ever seen it, that we grew up with, as far as like the macro level all the way down to the smallest level. Because, if you take the macro level, like let's say you take a Howard Stern, it's like he's a DJ, but he's not touching anything. He's just, pressing play, or, has a playlist and he's talking. And that's
Mhm.
almost like the macro DJ, like, okay, they're not even touching anything. Then it's like, okay, you get somebody where they're actually mixing, but they're just mixing. Then you get somebody, oh, they're mixing, but they're trick mixing. You know what I'm saying? And then you get somebody like, okay, they're juggling and they're cutting it up. And then you get somebody that's like, oh, they're only messing with a very small sound, and they're only, you know what I'm saying? Like for me in the past, 15 years, I've pretty much only been, scratching one record and one sound. You know what I'm saying? I've really just been really focused on, fresh and ah. And, a lot of people were like, oh, why don't you scratch something else? But, to me, it's kind of like a sword. It's like, you want the Excalibur sword, or you want to use nunchucks, you want to use a baseball bat. Like each kind of different sample to me is kind of like different. Like if you're in a role playing game and you have different swords, and it's like, hey, yeah, I just prefer the Excalibur sword over nunchucks or the baseball bat. You know what I'm saying? Because like obviously you can show that you're dope in different ways with different samples, but I'm fresh guy. But eventually I'm gonna expand to other stuff. But I feel like I really want to master those sounds first. And and since we're all scratch scientists, and both of us being literate in scratch science, I noticed too that over the years, like back in the day, in the late '90s, I would be like scratching over Goldie's album, Timeless and all that stuff. And I'd be scratching for hours and hours. And I was, and this is before, this is the late '90s, before I was literate in it. And, my skills will only progress so far. And also I'd have to scratch a lot just to stay sharp. But I
Mhm.
noticed now that I'm literate, I don't have to practice that much at all. You know what I'm saying? Compared to when I wasn't literate, because when I wasn't literate, it was like I really had to focus in on keeping that cut sharp. It's like, oh, if I hadn't scratched in 2 months, it'd be like, oh, I couldn't just come back in 10 minutes and be sharp again. But so it's kind of like if I noticed it's kind of like you know, if you are literate in words, it's like, hey, yeah, maybe you haven't picked up a book in a long time, but you can, start reading it. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to, go from like a different part of your memory. Because once you recognize the characters and you recognize the words, it's like, your brain's thinking about it in a different way. So it's not as much as like, oh, let me how do I do that scratch again? It's more like, okay, I know I can see the scratch in my head, and I know I can't do it super fast right now, but I know I can still do it at this speed or whatever type of a thing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, so let's get into your cars, because when you show me those cars, I was like, oh man, that's so amazing, and it really needs to get out there, and people really need to know all the sciences that you've contributed to the art form. And I think I'm gonna probably, before I post this video of this interview for TTM chat, I'll probably, I've been meaning to add you to the 100 days of TTM series that I started last year, where I've been focusing on different TTM composers from around the world. And
Yes.
and you're one of the most prolific, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, they might just have, three drawings or five drawings, 10 drawings, but you've got dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens. You got a whole card set, a whole series of flashcards. And also I think it's cool too how you have the daily tips. And because I saw there's another section of the flashcards where it's not notation on it, but it's kind of daily reminders and daily tips and practicing tips and inspirational tips. And also, it ties into I want to talk, about your music as well. And because I noticed you're making a lot of kind of inspirational, very happy music, a lot of
Mhm.
turntablists, a lot of producers are making very dark stuff. Your stuff is, very happy and uplifting, type of music. So yeah, before we talk about music, yeah, let's get into the flashcards.
Yeah, do it. And yeah,
Show that.
like this is a whole.
Oh, you got them physically too.
I got
Wow,
a, I got a
sick.
whole bunch of stuff.
Wow, wow, that's blowing my mind. That's blowing my mind. You got a whole actual, you actually got them physically too, because I've only seen the digital versions.
Yeah, the digital ones that you've seen only exist digitally, but they're pretty dope. But yeah, I got all kind of
Wow. Yeah,
crazy
can you
stuff.
go through them all? Yeah, like you know what I'm saying? Like this is great. Like yeah, I've
Yeah,
never seen these.
I
This
get
is
a,
great.
I get obsessed with things, so stuff like
Yeah, that's dope. That's so sick.
yeah. So
I mean, you
I
don't
get
have to go through them all if you don't want to, but you can go through as many as you want. We got all the time in the world.
there's a lot, and like I even did some like this. So I got these where the green ones are all faderless, so like
Hmm.
bases, tears, that
Okay.
kind of thing. The pink ones are all transforms,
Hmm.
so close, start, and close fader.
Nice.
Uh, this is like slices, so they start and end close fader, but they have open fader stuff in between. And there's another tear that's a green, so
Oh
fader.
yeah.
And then the yellows are like chirps and flares, so they start and end open fader.
Nice.
So I have this like theory, I call it the scratch alphabet.
Mm.
You can almost dissect every scratch, except for some like weird exotic stuff. But for the most part, anything that's like pattern based like this,
Hmm.
it all has notes to it. So like this one is three notes, two
Hmm.
forward, one back.
Hmm.
This is two notes, one
Hmm.
forward, one back, right? That's four notes. And that's like musical notes. Like they have a start and end to them. They have a place and time start. So there's really only four options, right? You
Hmm.
got it either the note either goes forward or back. So
Hmm.
you can start forward and then go back, or you could start forward and then go forward again. So
Hmm.
every time you make a movement, there's options. So your option is generally to go forward or back with the record
Hmm.
on where you are in the sample. So you're basically your two options for record movement is forward and back. That's it. And then because I like to simplify things, and then based on that, each one of those movements has options. So you can either start and end with no fader,
Hmm.
this, or you could start with closed fader and end with open fader. So like this first note starts with closed fader, ends open fader. The second note starts open fader,
Hmm.
ends closed fader, and then start and end close fader. So you got start and end close fader, start and end no fader, or start no fader and fader close, or the opposite, start close and no fader. That's your four options.
Hmm.
So that's what I think of like scratch DNA. So like all patterns are just like infinite combinations of those four options. So you could think of it as eight options if you want, because there's a forward movement and the reverse movement of the record. But that helps me like with flow. So those digital flashcards is all about flow because sometimes people say, "Oh, you have good flow."
Hmm.
How do you do that? You get good flow. Um,
Yeah,
Part of
and
that.
you know what to
Oh,
me, me too, like with the whole idea of flow, to me, like with I like to, compare different hip hop art forms with each other, like breakdancing and stuff like that. And I feel like with the B-boys, like the footwork is kind of like flow, whereas like, the power moves is like, okay, I'm just doing raws, I'm just doing this, they'll be like, oh, I'm just doing a flare, doing a flare, doing a flare, doing a flare, doing a flare. And then like, oh, they're going into they're spinning on their head, spinning on their head, spinning on their head, spinning on their head. And like the West Coast break dancers were all into the power move stuff. And then the East Coast people where it originated from, a lot of them were like, a lot of them when they judge battles, they're like, it's like you guys aren't doing any dance moves in there. You're not, using, with turntablists, it's almost kind of like using negative space. Like, if you're just doing move after, I'm just going boomerang, 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 flare, flare, boomerang, boomerang, flare. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people, they want to hear some dancing in there, dancing with your fingers, where it's like, you're using more negative space and you're being more funky with it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's all about your goals too, because you're talking about, oh, I want to master like the ah and the fresh. It's like my sword. I want to get that sharp as possible. And I think that's super important. And that's something I realized too, is like with progress, if you want to make better progress with your practice, you need to have a goal and
Mm,
like think about what kind of DJ do you want to be? Are you a power move person? You just want to like do two click flares and boomerangs and hydroplanes and just like do crazy fast stuff all the time. That's dope. Like set your goal for that. And if you want to unlock flow, then I can definitely flow with boomerangs and two clip flares. Like you can flow with anything, but it definitely comes from like simplifying. But even a boomerang or two clip flare is a combination of those four options. Like you can break down each note. There's 6 notes in each of those. Those are great scratches to practice. Actually, the boomerang is a great scratch because it has all the options. It has all 4 of those options in it.
Mm.
There's notes that start and end fader close, notes that well, there might not be, there's no notes that start and end with the fader open, but there's definitely forward and reverse, start and end, fader close, forward and reverse, start open, end close, and start close, end open. Especially if you practice it in phases, which is something else I
Do you have
do.
it in the card right now?
Yeah, let me see. I have that card. Yeah.
And
So
it'd be interesting too is because when you were just talking about those, the alphabets of it and the 4 those 4 main types, it'd be interesting to see one of those like flow chart question type of things like I'm talking about where it's like, is it brown? Is it made out of metal? Is it, like, where you could prompt the questions like, is it open fader? Like you're trying to figure out some scratch or something, and it's like, oh, does it start with the open fader? Does it, like it'd be cool to see an actual I forgot what those charts are called, but you know what I'm talking about? It's like a
yeah, yeah.
chart, but that's asking you questions, and it's like yes, no, and then it, leads you to the next, next type of thing like
Yeah.
that.
Well, like breaking down if it starts and ends like this, then it's this.
Exactly, exactly.
I have so many. I need to organize them better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, people,
I
yeah.
have these too. These are just this is totally different, but this is just like vibes.
Oh wow.
Cause like, you know,
Dope. That's dope. That's dope.
yeah, so like if I all these would be totally different. Like if I did 2 click players, hyper style, like that's whatever that means to me. Beast, suave. It just affects like because to me music is about emotion. Like
Hmm.
it's a language of emotion and we can tap into different feelings. We can make people feel different ways and it can bring out different expression in this and in our scratches by just like thinking of different stuff while we scratch. Uh,
That's so dope because a lot of times when people think about flow, they just think like, oh, flow, it's just one thing. But obviously within the realm of flow, there's infinite directions that you can go, and it's cool to be able to, what you're doing, people call that, taxonomy, the art of, labeling things and organizing things
yeah.
by different names. And that's really cool to actually break flow down into different, different types of flow. And that's cool, like, suave versus it could be rough, funky, all different, so many different adjectives and stuff like that. And feel free to go through all your cards unless you want to keep them secret. If you want to keep, certain things secret, that's
Yeah,
totally.
I like to share knowledge pretty freely, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, but so yeah, if you want to go through all your cards or as many as you want, please, please show them all. Yeah, like.
So this is a concept I call phasing, right? So this is a boomerang. This is also a boomerang. So it has 6 notes, right? And
Hmm.
I think a lot of people would think of it as starting here and ending here, and that's how it exists. If it starts here and it ends here, and that's a boomerang. But you can start and end on any one of these 6 notes, and just a easy way to unlock flow is to start and end on different notes. So this is a 6 note pattern. If
Hmm.
you scratched it 7 notes, if you scratch 7 notes, pause, 7 notes, pause, but you keep going through the pattern. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and stop. And then you start from here. One,
Hmm.
two, three, four, five, six, seven. And it's going to twist your brain around, which is another aspect of flow. It's kind of like problem solving. Like when you're giving yourself a challenge and you're
Hmm.
like trying to solve a challenge in real time, like starting and ending on different notes every time you repeat this, it starts unlocking flow because you're like in real time
Yeah, it's another level.
process something and unlock a challenge. But I do have a card for each phase, so it's like
Oh,
this is
that's sick. Yeah, that's sick because that's a whole nother level of understanding when you can get into the delayed level where it's like, okay, delayed 2 clicks, delayed boomerangs, and
yeah,
you can drop it at any phase of it and loop it from any of those phases.
exactly.
It's a whole, I don't know if you've seen Vec's stuff with that too. He's got a lot of cool some boomerang phase stuff that he's been doing recently and over the past.
Yeah, I
Uh
have,
yeah, yeah, he's got, yeah, definitely check out some of his stuff. I think I took screenshots, of some of it and uploaded it to the TTM Academy Instagram. But yeah, that and Emma Shore T too. I don't know if you ever seen any of her tutorials or anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah, great tutorials, yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
got a lot of cool phasing stuff too. And also a lot of cool, she's got a lot of cool like how when you're flipping things upside down. you know, she was one of the first I ever saw to do a whole, you know, actually put a scratch on the actual XY axis and say, oh, what happens when I reflect it this way? What happens when I reflect it this way? What happens when I reflect it this way? All four ways, you know,
Yeah.
which is really cool too. But yeah,
Do you
keep
have
going.
Yeah, so like talk about those like unlocking flow because I'm all about that. Whenever you make a movement, you have an option. So like if you're at the end of the sample and you close your fader, your option is basically move the record forward and open the fader. You kind of only have one option right there. But if you're like in the middle of the record, you could go
Yeah.
forward or back. If your fader is open, you can move and keep the fader open, or you can move and keep the fader closed. The point is that whenever you kind of stop a note, every note has a start and end point. And depending on what the end point of the note is, kind of dictates what you can do next. So yeah, I was talking about those options, right? So you are either going to move forward or you're going to move reverse, and you're either starting fader open or fader closed, basically. And if you look, each one of the phases, let's see, I'm gonna put these in order of the boomerang has each one of those options. So you got this one starts from a forward movement and starts open and ends closed. This one starts from a reverse movement, starts open, ends closed. So you got forward and reverse starting open. This one starts forward but end starts closed, ends closed like a stab kind of, or like part of
Mhm.
a transform. So I kind of think you got the chirp version, the slice version, the stab version kind of. So here's the reverse or transform. So it kind of starts with a stab or transform in reverse. This one starts with kind of a stab, however you want to think about it, stab or transform forward, which is a good thing for unlocking flow, is just thinking about things differently. So however I say, this is how I think about it. You can think about it however you want. It doesn't matter. Like, and it helps to think about it differently. So this one is forward, right here, forward starts close, ends open. And this is reverse starts close and open. So that's one of the reasons I think the boomerang is so cool for unlocking flow is
Mhm.
because it has all those options in it. And when you can do all six phases, it kind of works with any other scratches you're doing. So if you're doing transforms, you could go into a boomerang by starting with this like transform version. If
Mhm.
like chirps or flares,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
go into the boomerang by doing this chirp or flare version. If you're this one is more like where's the slice? One of them is more like a slice. Yeah. If you're doing kind of slicey things, you could go into the boomerang with the slicey version. And in either direction, forward or reverse. And these are all it's the same notation. Like if I just keep drawing this infinitely, you pick out all those phases in the same repeating pattern.
That's dope. That's so dope because that's like with the B-boy thing I was saying before. That's like, oh, if you're spinning on your head, from if you're at the point of you're spinning on your head, you can do these things. It's like, okay, I'm spinning my head now. Now I can maybe flip off my head and land on my back or something. But it's like, oh, now that you're on your back, you could do this. You could spin on your back, or you could flip back up, or So that's so dope because it's like, from being at a certain point, what can you do from those other points? That's really, really sick.
Yeah. I love it. And that's just you can apply that concept to any scratch. So like once you can do a scratch one way, like you feel good about it, it's good to see like how many different ways can you get in and out of this scratch? Like how creative can you be with transitioning into it and out of it? And I
Mm,
think that's, something that it's hard to I think it's kind of hard to practice because it's like here's the moves, these are the moves, but it's hard to practice how do you be creative about transitioning between different moves. And
mm,
so it's like if I'm doing slices, my brain is kind of thinking slices, and this is a good thing to with literacy. Why literacy is good because when I unlock the flow, I don't have to think, okay, let me do a 6 note pattern that has open and close things, and it goes like this. No, I just think boomerang, right? And then I can start doing a boomerang. So if I can like give my brain, I program my brain with this, right? I'm
mm.
programming my brain. So my brain, when I say, tell my brain boomerang, it does this. And if I'm doing slices and I tell my brain boomerang, it knows which part of the boomerang to start doing it from. Or if I'm doing like chirps. And I will say, for me, the slice version is still a little more challenging than the.
Mm.
And I think that's also another good reason for the phases. You can find where your weak points are because you might find that certain phases, certain directions are a little bit easier.
Hmm.
That can eliminate frustration, I think, because the boomerang is not, you're not going to unlock that in one day. It's not an overnight pattern, that's for sure. And there might be that one of the phases is easier. And once you can do it one phase, it's easier to do the other ones. But sometimes if you start with the chirp version and you haven't practiced a lot of chirps, the chirp version might be hard. But if you practice a lot of slices, maybe the slice version easier. So I don't know, but it's
That's a good topic, the easier versus more difficult. Because for me, I've actually stayed away from boomerangs just because of the difficulty level and the number of clicks. Like for me personally, I've been trying to accumulate as many styles that I can that use as few clicks as possible. So like real minimal clicking, and mostly everything I'm doing is open fader type of stuff. And because in the 90s I was doing so much, transforming and clicking that it's just like it was really taxing in my arms and stuff like on my wrist and all that type of stuff. And even with like I don't know if you know what happened with DJ Chile and him, like with just carpal tunnels and DJs dealing with stress to their to their hands and stuff like that. I've been recommending DJs and I've been doing it too as well because I've been telling people like, I think it's better to only practice for like 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? In my personal opinion, because it's like if you practice for two hours, I used to do that at 97, be like, oh, I'm scratching for 2 hours. It's like what happens is your arm starts to get tired, your hand starts to get tired, and then if you're trying to learn new techniques and master those techniques, then you're not learning them at optimal physical ability, and then you're actually learning a bad version of it because it's like if you're practicing. It's just like if you're trying to, practice your ABCs and you're really tired and you're sleepy and you're groggy or whatever, you're trying to read something or learn something, you're gonna have to keep rereading it, or you're just, it's better to be fresh and I think it's better to just kind of like practice 15 minutes and then 5 hours later do another 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's like because then both times you'll be fresh, then it just be like, oh, I'm gonna practice for an hour and a half that day, type of a thing. So for you, are you, I'm curious about, are you more into, well, I have two questions. One, are you more into open fader stuff or closed fader stuff, as far as your arsenal of scratches, the styles that you drop, or, you know what I'm saying? And then my second question is, I think the question's about, just learning in general. No, learning in general. Do you think you're a better DJ now than you were 5 years ago? Because I noticed that a lot of DJs, especially ones that aren't literate in scratch notation, most people have their peaks and then they get like, oh, they might have been dope in 2005 or 98 or whatever, and then then they get rustier or rustier. You know what I'm saying? But whereas I noticed with a lot of the scratch literate DJs, we just keep getting doper and doper as we get older and stuff. Because it's like I'm 45 and I could destroy myself at 18, at 30, at 35 even. You know what I'm saying? Like even at 40, you know what I'm saying? I'm just getting better and better. And I noticed that I'm getting better just because I've been focusing like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on these one or two techniques for 2 weeks or something, and I'm just focusing just on those two techniques. Whereas back in the day I was just fun and I was just jamming all day, and now I don't do jamming like that anymore. I just really focus on the techniques. So have you gotten better over time is my second question, and the first one was are you more into open fader stuff or closed fader, or a good mix of both?
Yeah, I love that. Both questions are dope. Yeah, so definitely I love fader lists. So like tears, super
Mhm.
important. One reason is I've played on some broken equipment
Mhm.
and sometimes I like to do other stuff with my hand, like I do live beats or something. So I like to be able to just scratch with just one hand only. And so definitely tears are foundational for me. And I read this article with D Styles one time where he's like, if you don't have record control, if you can't scratch without the fader, then you can't scratch. I don't remember if he said it exactly. That was the exact verbatim. If he's watching this, he's like, I didn't say that. But that's I remember him saying something basically to that effect. That was my takeaway. And that was real important. And
Mhm.
I used to scratch and I can scratch both hands,
Mhm.
but my right hand on the record is way better now.
Mhm.
And when I first started, I started scratching left hand on the record. I'm a right-handed person. And so I got kind of good at two click flares
Mm-hmm.
and crabs on this left side.
Mm-hmm.
And I practiced a lot of, yeah, that was like my main two things I did a lot on this side. And at one point, my I cut my hand really bad, my left hand, so I couldn't scratch at all. But I love scratching, I love practicing, so all I did was tears on
Mm-hmm.
my right hand on the record for like a few weeks, and I got a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting hooked on that, and then I started scratching on this side. So I would say, and I kind of like, I think about the fader as doing one thing. It turns the sound on and off, right? It puts silences in the sound, it cuts the sound out. So if I'm thinking about patterns and organizing things, then I think in terms of closed fader and open fader. And so like to practice and challenge myself. But when I'm actually like flowing, I definitely like a lot of stabs, like a lot of chirps
Mm-hmm.
and tears. I would say it's not so much closed fader or open fader. I really just like basics,
Mm-hmm.
like slices, chirps, transforms, stabs, tears, one click flares. I realized that when I practiced on this hand, I got I wasn't that my timing wasn't very good. I didn't have that very good rhythm, but I could do
Mm-hmm.
two flares and crabs. But they
Mm-hmm.
were I thought they were cool, but once I recorded them and listened back, I was like, wait, that's really sloppy. And so I didn't have that good a timing.
Mm-hmm.
That bothered me. So, and I realized, you know what? I actually started practicing two click flares and crabs before I knew how to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
I was on QSU, Qbert Scratch University. Eventually, at one point, he's put this video out. He said, "Nobody send me a video until you can do stabs and tears." And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, get your stab and tears down first, no matter what, because those are going to be the scratches that make you better at everything else. And so, and then I think it also might have been D Styles or somebody too on Instagram or something. They're like, too many people try to practice advanced scratches too soon. And
I
so I
agree.
was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna do see how much I can do with just the basics. And now I'm like, I look at that other people. I'm like, if you can't, and I started thinking like this, you need to be able to win a battle with the scratch that you have in your arsenal. So I think of it like it's like an arrow, like you have a quiver of arrows. You can't put a million arrows in there. Like you talk about
Mm-hmm.
a sword, right? And I kind of
Exactly.
arrows you can't in terms of techniques, like
Mm-hmm.
your sample choice. But I was like, you can't have too many techniques in your quiver. You can only have a limited number, so you want to make sure they're very sharp. So and Qbert had those technique battles, and I was like, okay, if you can win a battle with just one scratch, then you got that scratch down pretty good and your arrow is pretty sharp. And if you can't do babies, then if you can't, then you're not gonna be able to do any other scratch. You have to be able to move the record back and forth. And pretty much anyone could do babies right off the bat. They're easy, right? Uh, but if you to win a battle with a baby, to be nice with a baby, to be expressive, to do rhythms, to be creative, I think when you've mastered a scratch is when you understand that you can be infinitely creative with it and you understand that you can like change it and do things differently with it. And the more complex a scratch pattern is, the harder it is to do different things with it. The more you're confined by the pattern. But you can break out of that over time, and that's what makes stuff cool. Like a one-click flare, I can do one-click flares that sound you would not be able to tell that they're one-click flares just by listening, probably, because you can just slow notes down and do weird stuff with it. So I would say like not so much thinking in terms of closed or open, but more basic, like foundation. I like foundational scratches and getting funky
So,
with that. Yeah.
yeah, and old school versus new school too, because it could be like, hey, I like, mixing some, 80s with some early 2000s, or this person likes mixing some 90s with some.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is too, I like how you're talking about the infinite possibilities because scratching is infinite. And when I was making the Matrix and all that type of stuff, I realized I was like, wow, this is infinite. You could just keep doing this forever. But with rapping, the patterns aren't infinite, because with rapping, people, if you added up all the patterns that rappers have done over the years, it's probably, it might be 30 different type of patterns, like, maybe like Tech Nine and, some Freestyle Fellowship people have recorded, over 30 patterns, 40 different types of patterns and stuff like that. But it's not like 1,000 patterns. You know what I'm saying? It's not because, with the rap, you can only do so much with, but with DJing, you can reverse it. There's so many different ways you can tweak it, just faderless. When I first saw Qbert do that whole faderless thing, where he was just flowing off of faderless stuff, that totally, blew my mind, back in the day. And I was just like, wow, it's pretty crazy. But also too, with the infinite possibilities thing, and starting off simple, I think it's really important too, like how you're saying that D Styles was saying, a lot of people are jumping, like, can't get their babies down, but they're like, oh, I'm trying to do the boomerang, and it's almost the same as like in math, because this is mathematics, because you're just presenting boomerang, six boomerang equations of different phases. This is
Mhm.
all mathematic, and this is because at TTM Academy, I call it the apex of hip hop science, and that's what this is, because nobody else in hip hop, or no, outside of the turntablists, are really doing real scientific things like this. Like, you're literally showing us equations, and even within math, if you don't have your addition down and you don't have your subtraction down, you can look at it like babies and stabs and stuff like that. If you don't have those and slices down and core things down, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to jump to algebra. I want to jump to calculus. Like, oh yeah, I want to do this like cool calculus thing. It's like, yeah, you can do that. You can start learning calculus. You can skip addition and go straight to calculus. But, it's way better to start with, addition and subtraction, and then, build on from there, build on some geometry and trigonometry before you get into calculus. You know what I'm saying? Because calculus is cutting up, because trigonometry is when you're just dealing with waves and you're not cutting them up. You're just dealing with like, oh, different amplitudes of waves, and it's just like faderless scratching. Trigonometry is like
That's
faderless scratching, and but then when you get into actually bisecting waves and being like, oh, this going up, oh, but I stop it there, and it's only off for that one point. That's what calculus is where you might have a function, and only in one value of that function there's no value for it, and that's the same as like a click, where it's like, oh, look, there's that wave is going, but just for that one, outside of the curve of the crossfader, obviously it's usually not just one point, because then you wouldn't even hear it turn off if you had a crossfader that only clicked off for a second. So obviously it's got to be a couple of points or whatever
yeah.
to be off. But it's the same type of a thing where you're getting really complicated into those things. So like, and that's why it's just so amazing to see, to see all your work. And I think it's really important that other turntablists around the world are in communication with each other, and seeing what each other's doing. That's part of why I started this, TTM chat series, is for, the dialogue to get out there, and because it's also important to note that, how you were saying earlier, when you were doing scratches, but you didn't, the guy's like, can you do a flare? Back in the 90s, a lot of us were just, in the 80s too, it's like people were doing scratches, and just doing stuff funky, and just trying to be funky, and do what they heard. But then, but then in different regions, people were saying different things for different cuts. Like, I couldn't do, I've only really mastered my chirps, in the past, 8 years, because I had a whole, I was doing my flares and stuff like that, but before I had my chirps down, uh, because, my friend actually taught me the wrong thing about chirps. He told me, because if you look at the first TTM 1.0 booklet, the chirps are actually wrong in there, because as dicing, I wrote dicing as chirps. So my friend told me dicing and chirps were the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Because he didn't know any better, because it was, nothing was standardized, and nobody, it was just all, hearsay, and different people saying different types of techniques. So I thought that, like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're going back and forth, or if you let it, if you have it open fader sometimes, because dicing is just, you're just going back and forth, and you're clicking at every change of direction. And I
Mhm.
thought it was the same as, I thought that, oh, that's chirps. You're just going, like that, but you can't go fast like that. If you're
I'm pretty
dicing
proud
can't
of
go
that.
fast. And I'm like, how are they going so fast doing chirps like that? I can't go. I was trying to go fast, and I was just dicing. I was trying to go as fast as I can dicing. And I'm like, because dicing, you can't go super fast. And that's why, for me, I kind of, in the past 15 years, I've just been very, very open fader of a lot of things, just because you can go faster a lot of times, and usually the less clicks, you
Yep.
can go really faster. But these days I'm really into, I don't know, if like with the Oslo Flow guys, like the Oslo Flow people, just using really simple things, like how you're saying, of just mastering the real core, just mastering those slices and those stabs and those babies, and really focusing on the negative space, you know what I'm saying, and the funkiness, and the basically like the footwork, like when
Yeah,
you're
I love that.
talking.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's dope. Yeah. Yeah, and the notation is good too, like for setting your expectations, like going back to practicing things too quickly. The boomerang is complicated, right? And this particular version, right, it starts with a slice. This is if I cover this first part is just a slice.
Hmm.
And so if you start practicing boomerang, you never practiced a slice before.
Exactly.
That's a tall order, and then it goes from a slice to a transform, which is a weird feeling.
Hmm.
And then it goes to a reverse slice. So right there, you got forward slice and reverse slice. So if you haven't practiced forward slice and reverse slice, then the boomerangs, at least the slice version especially, is going to be very hard. And slices are super awesome. Like you can throw those in a lot of things. You can throw them in your flares. Uh, People love it. Let me see if I have one here.
Yeah. And what do you think about seesaws? Do you ever do seesaws?
Yeah, I love seesaws. I love seesaws, and I think about it like a principle.
Hmm.
So let me see if I can find one. So a seesaw has essentially you can move the record motion, but there's silence notes. So you can actually do, and I want to practice this more because it's real funky. Let's see.
Yeah, it's the cool thing about seesaws too is that if you try to go really fast, it's really, really hard to do it because it's like, there's so much clicking involved. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool, like cross rhythm type of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So it has this like it's cool because there's still a note there, but it's silent. So if you're like counting the pattern, it's 1, 2, 3, but you don't hear the 3, 4, 5, 6, you don't hear the 6. But it's still like mentally, you
Mm.
have you have to keep track of that because there's a little space there. That's what makes it sound funky. So it's like practicing that negative space thing. And you can apply that to other patterns. So I like stuff.
Wow, this is so
Yeah,
dope, man. To see all these variations. That's just so, so dope, man. Like, people have
like
never seen this. You know what I'm saying? Like people, I've never seen, all these cards. This is great. Just, to see, because it's infinite. So many combos, so many different ways to.
yeah, so infinite. And like it's dangerous too, because I got, it takes a long time to write all this stuff down. And then you're that at a certain point you're not practicing anymore. But I will say this, you were talking about like am I better now? Definitely better.
Hmm.
And I'll say part of that is practicing less and using more of my mind and more of my
Exactly.
intentions and less of my physical body. Because for a while I was obsessed with practicing. I practiced like 3, 5, 8. I was like, if you don't practice 10 hours a day, how are you gonna win battles? That's what I thought.
Mm.
Uh, and so I did that, but my whole life was messed up. Like
Mhm.
my house is dirty, and sometimes I'll get burnt out and I win in practice. And
Mhm.
in 2016, I kept track of my practice, like days in the calendar. And then
Mhm.
at the end of the year, I missed 72 days of practice, which is like a lot of days to miss. Like, it's a few months. And I was like, okay, forget this practicing hours a day thing. And I committed to practicing stabs for
Mm.
1 minute a day after I brushed my teeth.
Mm.
I just like, and I was like, how can I get as much progress in 1 minute as I can? Because if I can get as much progress in 1 minute, think how much progress I can get in 10 minutes. Right? But then I developed consistency. I started keeping track. I got up to before I stopped keeping track of the number, it was like 1,700 something days in a row of practicing. And
Mm.
I think of it so even just 1 minute a day. I say 15 minutes isn't good. If you just practice 15 minutes like two
Mhm.
times a day, that's amazing. I
Mhm.
agree, you'll get great progress. Um, and just 1 minute a day though, even if you have a million other things going on, like practicing for 1 minute just to keep it going
Yeah, and
is
leaving it on, leaving the turntable on, like, hey, I can just walk over there. It's already set up.
yeah.
1 minute,
Yeah.
okay, it's still there.
I'm telling you, like I think a lot of people think, oh, if I don't practice, because I thought this,
Mm.
if I don't practice for hours, then it's not even worth it. But now it's more like I think about like the game Tony Hawk, like when you get a combo going, as long as you keep doing tricks,
Mm.
your multiplier increases. So
Mm.
it doesn't matter if it's the simplest trick, like just a ollie or a manual, it'll increase your multiplier and then you get way more points. And so I think of like consistency,
Mm.
daily, just a little bit every day, it multiplies over time. And if you miss days, especially if you miss 72 days in a year like I did, then you actually don't make that progress, even though a lot of times I was practicing for many, many hours a day. Uh, it was so, and also I changed my intention. I set goals and was like working towards something specific. which at the first time was just getting better at stabs. Super dope at stabs. I'm gonna share my screen, show these flow
Oh, yeah, yeah,
cards.
yeah, yeah, I want to see this. And before you show us, yeah, I was gonna say in the late '90s, I was doing the same thing. Probably from '90, five to 2001. I was probably, I was just, scratching over, two whole albums a day. Scratching for hours, 3 hours a day, every day. And I hear those old mixes and old tapes, and I'm like, oh, like, I can't even listen to. I hate it. Because I wasn't progressing. I was just jamming and just jamming on this infinite plane where you just kind of, you're not getting anywhere, because a lot of people feel like, oh, jamming, you're gonna get doper and doper, but no, it's really about focusing on your brain learning the new technique and
Yeah,
versus the quantity of how long you're, doing the stuff.
yeah. And jamming is important. Like you do want to jam, but definitely I agree. Like the progress, it doesn't come from how much time you spend practicing. It comes from how focused are you on your practice and how intentional are you. And that was kind of like, and I have this thing. My system, I call my RTFR system, which is repertoire, technique, flow, repertoire. So you
Nice.
start with like a repertoire. So it could be somebody else's
Mhm.
scratching that you're trying to learn. Like if I was trying to learn somebody else's scratch and I try to do it, I might assess, okay, what techniques do I need to learn to be able to do this? Or if it's something my own flow, like I'm trying to write my own thing, I'm like, okay, I'll go through the routine and be like, okay, what techniques do I need to work on to improve this or to be able to do it? And that's the first R, repertoire. And then the T is technique. It's like, because then I do specific practices to improve the actual technique. And then it's the F, it's the flow. I'm gonna be able to flow with the technique. And I think about it like it's kind of like I heard this thing of going from mechanic to organic. So
Mhm.
when you first start learning something, it's kind of mechanical. You got to focus on it. It's just kind of stiff, and then but once you practice it more, you can start flowing with it, do more different rhythms. It feels good, and when you can flow with the technique, do different things with it, then put it back into the repertoire and see how it's fitting. So it's like I start with some kind of routine or some kind of flow that I want to build to like it's like the thing that I'm going to share with other people. Like, what do I want to show people with these scratches? Because when I was practicing drills for
Mhm.
hours a day, I didn't have much to show to people, and that not very satisfying. So
Mhm.
I put techniques through this process, like repertoire, technique, flow, repertoire. So kind of like that QSU battle, rather than just let me learn stabs. It's like, okay, well, let me make a video with stabs that could win a battle. And then I would start with like, okay, press record for 1 minute, do stabs, see how good it is. And like that's the battle video. If I had to enter the battle right now, this is what I'd have to submit. Boom. And then I'd assess that and then take the stabs through technique practice and then flow with the stabs and then go back and do another battle video and see how my stabs improve. So like I
Oh.
always like to have some kind of focused thing that I'm building the technique for.
And I like how you're talking made that Tony Hawk analogy because I've been kind of doing that over the past 8 years of just really fast past 5 years. Because before I'd be like, oh, I'm trying to do all these difficult things, but I remember seeing certain break dancers where they would just be like, some of my favorite break dancers. It's not even about the type of moves that they're hitting. It's just that they're hitting so many consistent moves, back to back. Like even if it's just like, oh, look, they just went like that over their head, and there's some funny little move that's just like, yeah, it's easy to do it, but they just have so many tricks and they just, oh, pull out that trick, pull out that trick, pull out, and they can just consistently do trick, 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 trick over and over again. It doesn't matter how complex the trick is. It's the fact
Yeah.
that, just being able to consistently not mess up and do consistent new tricks that the other people haven't done.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. And the flow is like different tricks, different in scratching, different techniques, different patterns will take different amounts of mental load, right? So like you want to when you have more awareness of what takes less mental load for you and takes more mental load, which maybe sounds kind of weird, but
We don't know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, like some scratches I gotta think more about. I gotta focus more on it doing, and then other scratches I can just go all day nothing. It's all good. So there's kind of like my repertoire. There's levels of scratches that take higher amount of mental energy.
Yeah, and
And
like a crutch scratch too, like
yeah,
when people freestyle and rappers freestyle, sometimes they'll have a word that they keep saying that they don't want to keep saying, like they'll be like yo 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 or or whatever, just some type of thing.
say their
Even
name.
speaking, like there's a word that there's words that we use as filler, And I've done that as well, where, I'll have a scratch where I'll do that scratch so I can think about other scratches.
Hmm.
Like for me, I did a scratch called the wah scratch, and anytime you usually hear me doing a wah scratch, I'm not an actual wah, but it's a click it's a scratch that has three clicks in it. I just dropped it on TTM Academy on the Instagram, and I did it. I made it like in 1999. I showed it to Qbert in like 2000 at Virgin Megastore, and so it's just really easy for me to do because I've been doing it since 99, and so I can so let's say I'm like I want to do something that's more complicated. I can do that scratch and just kind of loop it for a couple of times or a couple of seconds while I'm thinking about what I'm about to the next scratch that I'm about to do, because it's kind of like a scratch that has low level of difficulty for me. And I wrote a routine for an IDA battle, a scratch battle, and I was doing that, and I wrote the routine based on giving myself space to breathe. Like, okay, I'm gonna do these scratches, and as kind of some filler where I can, get ready to do this kind of difficult one, kind of like in gymnastics when it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this little dance move and this little thing, so I can prepare to, start running and do this really complicated thing where I'm trying to do this triple backflip or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because if you're just constantly trying to do stuff that's difficult, 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 you need to have some time to think. So exactly,
Yeah,
it's a really great
exactly.
technique that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a big part of flow too, is just being aware of what those scratches are for you that you can do when you need some time to think. Um, so this flow builder, so this was designed to like build your
Can you make it
flow.
big somehow?
Yeah, yeah.
Or space bar? Yeah.
Let me open some of these up. So there's three sections of
Okay.
these. One of them is like notations, and each notation has three scratches. And it was like designed so that all three scratches go together. So when you end one, you could start another one.
Wow, that's dope. That's dope. That's so complex.
Yeah, I want to.
You're,
Yeah, so
you're selling these, or these are free for download? What?
yeah, these are free. I realized like when you asked me about them, I realized these in 2019. And
Mhm.
I think at the time I didn't realize how cool they were, and I didn't really like promote them that much or tell that
Mhm.
many people about them. I posted about them online. I think I went through 30 days. So it's designed to be like a 30-day program that you can go through, but you can also just use them randomly however you like. So each one has a day one, and they get more complicated. It starts with the most foundational, like easiest accessible things. Uh, but everyone's on a different level, practice different things. If you're depending on your level of scratches, you might think some of these are more complicated than others. But I generally try to make them getting more complex as they went throughout the days. And they each have three, and and this is what I call a warm tear and a cool tear. Um, warm and is two forward, one back. Cool is one forward, two back.
Oh, wait, so what's the difference between warm and cold again?
Yeah, and I use those terms for a lot of my things. So I think of these as shapes.
Okay.
So like the baby has this shape, one note forward, one note back. And the warm tear has this shape, which is two notes forward, one note back. And the cool tear has this shape, one note forward, two notes back. So both the warm and cool have three notes, but the warm you tear on the forward and then baby it back, and the cool you baby forward and then do
Wait,
two.
can you make it bigger? Because I'm just seeing the list right now.
Yeah.
Or open them up, or
Let me see what you're seeing. Oh yeah, it's not showing you.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's just showing the finder.
Yeah, it's not showing the. This is what I was trying to show you here.
But you can, if you press okay, good. Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, now I see. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that probably makes a lot more sense. Yeah, okay, so yeah, this baby shape, and that's another thing I did was kind of build on these shapes too as I go. So this is like a foundational shape, baby, warm tear, cool tear, and then you can add fader clicks to this to make different things. So like baby dice, we can have the dice. So that's baby shape, close fader here, close fader there, close fader there, like a baby dice, and you got your slice. Cool transformer. Like I said, I do a lot of tear, so all my stuff is tear based. And I find that when you get used to doing these tear shapes,
Mhm.
it's easier to do this transform tear like this. I'm going through these kind of fast. This is a flare. So I use this warm shape, warm chirp. So you tear forward, chirp, baby back. It's cool flare. And all of these, like if they would flow, all these would flow into each other.
So do you have hot? Is hot like on both sides? If there's this tear on both sides, or
Oh yeah, I would call that a warm cool. So warm,
oh, cool.
I
Okay.
use,
So
yeah, and then hot, I
warm is
actually,
warm is on the way forward, and cool if is the stuff is on the way back.
yeah, yep, yep.
Nice.
And I go to hot for when there's three. So warm is 2 notes forward, cool is 2 notes back. I use hot for 3 notes forward, and when I use cold for 3 notes back. So there's warm, cool. So the pattern, the shape is in the terminology. So if I just said warm, cool tear without even writing down the notation shape, I would know what that pattern is.
Mm,
Because the warm, cool refers to the record motion shape, and then the next word, in this case, tear, refers to the fader. So tear is like there's no fader. It's just a warm, cool shape with no fader.
mm.
Or this one says warm, cool, and then it says flare minus 1B. So that's getting deeper into my notation. But a normal flare would have a fader click
Yeah.
here and a fader click here.
Hmm.
So I would label those clicks the A click and the B click, which or forward click, back click. So minus that click on the back. So it's a warm, cool shape. And I like kind of build everything off thinking of tear shapes. You could do a non-tear version if you want, but I build these all off tear shapes because I find it's easier to do the flares and the transform versions just by thinking of like it's kind of like this thing with piano where you like get your left hand going until it's on autopilot, boom, boom, and
Oh,
then
you play piano. That's dope. You play
yeah, a
instruments.
little bit,
What other
yeah.
instruments?
Yeah, piano. So I do vocals, piano. I've been learning the guitar a little bit, produce. I'm also like a musicality coach, so I coach people on like songwriting and
Nice.
being musical and music theory and stuff like that. So kind of like one of the ideas with the flow is like I could do the warm cool tear. Qbert called it a clover tear,
Hmm.
uh, and just do the automatic boom boom like just it's just going. I can do it all day, and then I can do whatever I want with the fader. That's kind of like I call it a continuous motion flow.
Hmm.
This kind of helps unlock that too. So there's different continuous motion flows. That's a whole other, I got all kind of things. So
Yeah,
you
I
can do,
want to see them all, man.
yeah, so just a continuous motion fader flows and there's continuous motion tear flows. So like a 2 click flare and a boomerang actually have the same pattern of clicks. So if you just, an OG flare too. So if you can just think about clicking like a 2 click flare and then go from going, a long baby, 3 notes forward, 3 notes back to just doing babies and it'll be a boomerang.
Yeah,
Or
because
if
they
you,
sound similar too.
yeah,
Like what the duh,
yeah.
what
So
the what
this, like this pattern right here, it says reverse cool chirp +1. So that's, and you don't have to know all these terms. You can look at the shapes and see the things, but, because yeah, I didn't realize how deep my stuff goes until I started talking about it.
the right, right. I like
So
the water too. I like the graphics, because it's like soothing just to look at it, you know.
yeah, I wanted to be like, oh, it's like flow because being relaxed
Yeah.
a big part of flowing. If you're trying too hard, and that's actually, I just recently learned a name for it, and I'm forgetting the name. There's a name for this where the harder you try to do something, the less information you receive.
Mm.
And with effective practice, it's not how much time you spend or how hard you try, it's how much information do you receive.
Mm.
And when you're relaxed and you go slower, you receive more information. There's yeah, so yeah, there's a lot in there.
Sick. That's sick.
But it's kind of like, if you, and I think I'm gonna actually go through it again, this 30-day thing, and probably post online about it. I think that'll be fun. Um, cool. Yeah, and I have you were asking, oh, these available online. Yeah, I can send a link to anybody if they
Mhm.
want to message me or whatever, it's all good. And I got a Discord channel, so if people want to ask me questions and stuff about scratching, I got a Discord for that. Yeah, but these cars, there's like
You
go
should
ahead.
ask for some donations though too, or something. Like if you're not going to sell them, you could definitely ask for some donations. But that's dope. Yeah, put them out for free, man. And also, if you want me to, because I've got TTM.Ninja where I've just been putting out the Matrix stuff and the Matrix apps and stuff like that. But I can put a link to your stuff up there too. For if you're giving people free downloads or anything like that. Or even paid. If you want, a link to your site, whatever, I can put a link to everything you're doing. That's what I've been thinking about doing, is actually just having a part of the site where it's, like put your stuff, put Jesse Dean, link to Jesse Dean, a link to, a different, like just turntablists that are, doing stuff for scratch education,
That's dope. Appreciate
or
that.
scratch advancement, not just education, but, advancement education.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like to uplift people, like you said, with
Yeah,
my music.
and we'll talk about the portable stuff. I'm going to ask you because I'm not sure if you're into portable stuff, or because some DJs only do portable now, some DJs do both, some DJs don't do any. Or, yeah, but I'll save that question till after this.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll just go through. I just want to talk real bit about the three sections here because you got one section. So there's 30 days. So there's 30 flashcards in each section, and you can go through it as a daily program. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you did like day one, you'd use these three scratches, and then there's a day one practice. So just do each scratch for 1 minute, combo with all three for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and the time it's all under 10 minutes. So it's designed to build consistency with a small amount of time. Um, and then there's a flow thing. So repeat the same rhythms with different techniques. So
Mm.
you do these three techniques, but keep the same rhythm. So if the rhythm might be like da 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 da, you might try to do that same rhythm with each of the three techniques.
Nice. That's dope. That's a real important skill because also, within scratching, there's a lot of sound alikes. Like how, we were just talking about the boomerang similarity with the two click flare or two click orbit. There's a lot of scratches that, sound very similar, but it's different cuts.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And those noticing that too is part of building flow, those similarities. Yeah, so that's basically it. Like there's three scratches and they're all each day is three scratches. They all combo together, so they would all flow nicely together. Like you don't have to know anything about scratch theory because you just do these things, and they'll connect together. And someone might test your skills, so you might find something new. The idea is like each day of the 30 days, you experience something new.
Mm,
And then either with the techniques or with these flow, this is a flow builder. It's like things I think this one just says relax.
nice. Nice. I like that.
This one is like if you never scratch with your eyes closed, like some of these might change your life if you never did it before. If you never scratch with your eyes closed and just like focus on the sound and like how it feels, that might be like I wanted to like have little nuggets that like might change someone's life if they never tried it before.
I never do that. I'm gonna start doing that. I never do that. That's cool.
Yeah, so yeah. So get out of your comfort zone, try something new. So and the flow builder cards are like you could just pick one random every day and just apply it to whatever your practice is. And the same thing with these practice cards. So like these practice cards, a
Mhm.
lot of people talk about A, B, and C, but the A, B, and C is just the three scratches. It's referring to three different scratches. So it's good to focus on one technique at a time when you're trying to learn one technique, like as a technique practice, but as a flow practice and to actually even increase your memory of the techniques, it's good to flip between three different ones or even sometimes more. So these practices are designed to like flip between these three scratches in different ways. So it gives a little instruction. So A, B, C, each one for 1 minute. Then it has pairs. So you do A and B together for 1 minute, and then you do A and C together for 1 minute, and
Nice.
then B and C together for 1 minute.
Nice.
So it gives you like specific. So even if you didn't use these specific notations, you could design whatever you wanted for your A, B, and C scratches. You could say, okay, I'm gonna do stab, transform, whatever you want to do, and then just you could use these as little like like little scratch workout routines. This
Dope.
each day is a different way you could structure your practice. So that's something that like you're talking about just jamming.
Hmm.
It's good to be intentional with how you structure your practice, and it's also
Hmm.
good to be creative with that because if you do the exact same thing every day, it starts getting less effective. So these practices are like designed to introduce you to different ways of just programming your session. Just like if you were gonna do push-ups and pull-ups, you might program different reps, different types of sets. You might do different tempos and different things. So just
And how
different.
many days is this, a full month? Like how many days are these?
Yeah, it's a 30-day thing. And I think
Can you go through them all? We have all the time in the world. Yeah, you can go. There's no rush.
yeah, we don't think we have to go through them all. Yeah, we don't have
Oh, you
to
don't
go.
have to. Yeah, yeah. If you want to keep them, yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah. That's good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's just kind of like different variations of putting these together in different ways. The main thing is like the concepts. I want people to get the concept. So you got
Mm. Mhm.
so if you're gonna go, you go through the 30 days, you just do day one, those are your three scratches. Day one, that's your practice routine. And then I close the flow on. And then you'd have a flow on, like something to think about while you're
Mhm.
practicing, like relax. So that is yeah, that's pretty much it. Like
Dope, dope. That's so sick. That's so sick, man. That's really,
yeah,
really dope. Like,
put a lot of thought into it to like kind of like if you just do it, like there's a lot of concepts behind it that I go explain, but you also don't have to know anything. If you just do it and have the experience and like have a new experience every day. That was kind of one of the intentions, is like have a new experience every day and build consistency, not just with your scratching, but with having a new experience every day to
mm,
like be more creative, because creativity is really important for practice, not just for be like, oh, building routines or like making art, but in terms of how you think about putting things together, like
mm,
understanding like that there's infinite ways you can put things together, but you can be intentional and you can play with patterns. You figure out how to take things apart and put them together, then you can start being creative with how you organize, which I
yeah,
think
and
is,
mhm. Oh, I don't
oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
And on that subject of, piecing things together and stuff like that, you mentioned D Styles and one thing that I like that D Styles mentioned, I don't know if it was recently or past 10 years, he was mentioning, just being able to prepare for different types of speeds. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously, like if you're, doing a 3-click orbit and, and then the speeds at like, you're at drum and bass and it's like, oh, 163 and you might be able to do the half speed version, but the double speed version, it's just too fast. You can't go that fast over the double speed version. And so some cuts you can only do cross rhythms of a particular cut on it, and you can't even do the double time or vice versa. Different things like especially with the seesaws. A lot of times it's like it's like a
Yeah,
lot of times you can only do the cross rhythms a lot of times with the seesaws because if you're trying to go fast, like you can do it fast, but it's just so hard to go fast. What are your favorite speeds? Or do because some people, only scratch down tempo. Some people only, like in their electro vibes. Some people, stick in their drum and bass vibes, which is basically down tempo. If you go by the half speed or whatever. And and I was just scratching with these cats, with shout out to Tabletist Lounge LA and Tabletist Lounge San Diego, and they just blew me away because on the West Coast, they scratch over everything. They scratch, and whereas in the East Coast, a lot of people are locked into down tempo and 90s hip hop and under 100 beats per minute. You know what I'm saying? Most people are kind of more locked into like, just regular kind of 90s kind of premiere style, cuts where the West Coast people are more acclimated to scratching over everything. So I'm wondering what, like your favorite types of speeds are, you know what I'm saying? Or if you have any types, because for me, I like going all speeds and all time signatures and you're a music theory person too, and are there time signatures that you're into? Because some people can't scratch over certain time signatures. You throw some 6/8 stuff at somebody and they're just like, oh whoa, it just totally throws them off. And I'm actually going to do a lecture soon on this. There was a battle between two of my favorite tablists, Jose Rodriguez and Ejaculate, and they threw it was at the Sample Music Festival. They threw them this beat that was so hard. The time signature was like it was really really weird. It was like the first bar was 6/4, but then the second bar is 5/4, and then the third bar is 6/4. It was real complicated. It was like 23. It was like 23 counts, I think, per loop or something like that. And they both got thrown off. And Ejaculate was able to handle it the best, but they both like really messed up and failed over it. And but yeah, so yeah. Yeah, what are your favorite speeds? And what are your approach to different speeds? Because, obviously, like with what D Styles was saying, you got to be prepared to be able to navigate the different speeds. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Like, so I like all speeds and I'll scratch anything. And I like a challenge too. So if it's something that I'm not familiar with, I want to try it. Um, and music has layers to it. So there's like the speed of the tempo of the music, and then there's like the speed of the rhythms that you're doing. And so, um, like you said, halftime, like halftime drum and bass, like if it's 170, that's like 85 BPM would be the halftime. But you could also, if you scratch double time at 85, that's like 170. Uh, so any, you can break a beat down into any kind of division and have different speeds. Like if this is the beat, and I just do this speed, ja, 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 ja. That's like ja. That's just one sound per beat. So I like to think a lot about like how many sounds per beat. If I put two sounds per beat and they're even, it might be like da 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 da, and that's like twice as fast. Da
Mhm.
da da, and I could double that like da 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 da. So I like agility. So I want to be able to be like da 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 da. I want to be able to switch between the different rhythmic speeds over any tempo.
Mhm.
And I would like so if it's a faster tempo, it's like this is the beat. It's like that's like the beat. Then it's going to be harder to do that.
Mhm.
But some scratches I might be able to do that. But I also want to just be able to be like or do slow notes over that like da da like drags. I love drags. Da 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 da. So like agility to be able to switch rhythmic speeds over different tempos and like understanding how the speed of the notes relates to the speed of the music is important. And so I scratch over any style, and I like to be aware of
Mhm.
how different techniques, how far I can take them over any style. And I think that even if you want to be a master of a certain tempo or a certain style of music, you'll be better at it if you can do anything you want, because the body is all about efficiency. So if you expose your body and your brain to every single possibility,
Mhm.
and whenever you want to do what you want to do, your body's going to know exactly what to do. So like if you want to scratch really great to 95 BPM hip hop, if you actually practice to all tempos and all speeds, and you can do whatever you want over any tempo or any speed, it's going to be able to really easy to do whatever you want with the 95 BPM, whatever your main thing that you like the most is. So I think that again, like doing a new thing every day, you got to get out of your comfort zone, and actually being able to have control and do whatever I want is important. And that's how I'm going to be the best at doing any one specific thing, is having that flexibility and that confidence to, yeah, just do any style. Like I just love music. I love making noise.
Mhm.
So it's and to Ty, you asked me about portables. Yeah, like
Before we move into portables, I was gonna say, do you do this method? I always tell my students to look at it kind of like weightlifting. I don't know if when you start a new scratch off, I always tell them to start off, super slow at whatever the slowest speed that they can do it at, and then it's like, oh, let's say 68 beats per minute is the slowest speed. I mean, is the best you can do it at, and then it's like, okay, now put it up to 69. Oh, now put it to 70. Okay, go. Like, oh, okay, now you're all the way up to 110. You're at 110 beats per minute. Oh, now you're at 120. And then there might be a physical limit to that. Just like how I was talking with 3 clicks and stuff like that. With 3 clicks, once you get to 130, it's like, whoa, it's really hard to get really fast 130. Oh, 135, 140. Some cuts have a physical limit. So I'm just curious if you do that, if you start off super slow with your scratches or.
yeah, so you earlier talking about like, if you practice it and with bad technique and you keep doing that over time, that's what you're getting good at. And actually, it's better to do it exactly really good. So actually, when I this is crazy. Some people think this is crazy, but when I'm first learning a technique, or if I want to like really get a technique more polished,
Mhm.
practice it at 40 beats per minute, or maybe even slower.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I'll even skip a click,
Mhm.
like I'll put one note per click, like and just do it super slow and focus on like each individual note. And I usually like to do that 10 times, so but not
Mhm.
exactly in a row. I'll do it once and then reflect on it, like boom, like how can I make it better the next time? And I'll write a little tally mark. And I like to do it like 10 times, the first time when I'm first learning it. Because when you're learning something, I'm a nerd about learning and like how the brain works and stuff.
Mhm.
So when you're first learning something, you're basically programming your brain. You're like encoding it. You're putting
Mhm.
the information into your brain. So you're literally training your hands to move a certain way to make a certain sound. So the more associations you have, like the notation, what it sounds like, how your hands are moving, all those things help you program that into your brain. So you're essentially programming an order of movements when you're trying to learn a scratch, programming an order of movements. So the more focus you have on that, and the more direct that you're like really focused, and the more like intentionally you're trying to do it the best you absolutely can. Because I don't believe in perfection, because I believe
Mhm.
we can improve. But as
Mhm.
long as you're putting your intention into being as doing it the best that you possibly can with every single rep. So when I first learned, it's like 40 beats per minute, super slow, focusing on doing it as immaculately as I can, like 10 times. And then I'll start testing it 2 beats. So I like to set a goal,
Mhm.
right? Whatever my goal is, like if there's a certain tempo or beat or routine I'm trying to do, then I'll just flow with it at that tempo and see where I'm at, and then I assess it and see what I need to do. Um, but I do generally, yes, start as slow as you can so that you can execute it as well as you can is important. And then from there, I don't always ramp up directly. Sometimes I'll go higher and lower. I'll go more random with my tempos rather than just ramping directly up. I find that to be more fun and effective for me. And setting goals. So when I'm always going back and retesting, I like to let a recording decide what I practice. So I record something, and then based on that recording, what I did, I'll assess it. I'll be like, oh, this is what I need to practice.
Nice, you analyze it. That's like people that are learning, that's a big thing, like recording what you're doing and analyzing it, That's
Yeah.
like football players or sports players or anybody, Olympic people, they're looking at their technique. I was looking at the thing with this one swimmer, and she wasn't qualifying it. She's an Olympic swimmer now, and she wasn't qualifying in college. And this one doctor looked at her head underwater, and he's like, "Look, if you just lift your head angle just a little bit, you're going to be able to go 4 times faster or whatever." It was her head was a little bit too far down, and when she was swimming, I think it was one of the underwater swimming challenges, I mean competitions, and she just changed the angle of her head, and now she's an Olympic swimmer. But before that, she wasn't even qualifying in college, which is kind of interesting. And the last question I wanted to ask you about the styles before we get into the portable stuff is when I was in Cali, I noticed that there's a culture of people coming together, scratching and going different speeds. But I feel like maybe Midwest and the East Coast, we're all kind of like isolated from each other. And because hip hop's not hip hop culture in California is really strong, and the whole West Coast, there's tours. You can tour from, I mean, as far as underground hip hop, they can tour from San Diego all the way up to Canada, you know what I'm saying? And there's vibrant shows, and it's constant, whereas Midwest and the East Coast in the South, it's like it's not everybody's kind of disconnected, and most of us are kind of real isolated, where each city only has like, oh, there's 3 guys that are dope in this city, there's 5 guys that are dope in this city, women too, that are dope in the city. But you go to the West Coast, it's like, oh, there's 80 dudes that are dope in this city. There's it's totally different. It's totally different. I was blown away how dope everybody is in the West Coast, and I'm like, wow, West Coast has got the highest level of scratching in the U.S. Also the highest level of trees, and I don't know if there's some combination with trees, higher
I
level of
need to go there.
scratching.
It sounds amazing.
But do you ever link up with cats in your area? Because for me in Atlanta, I was I'm just now finding out about certain cats here, but we're still limited. It's just a handful of cats that really cut out in Atlanta, and just different cities in the East Coast. I'm wondering about you as far as Midwest, and also related to that, when you were doing you were vocalizing cuts. I think it's really important for turntablists to be able to vocalize what they're doing too, and also think about the relationship between rapping and scratching, and how those two things influence each other. Because when Twista started double time rapping and stuff like that, I mean, obviously Freestyle Fellowship and other people were doing that first, way back. But when Twista popularized it and it was on TV and stuff like that, I noticed a lot of scratch DJs started being more double time and scratching, you know what I'm saying? And the rap styles were influencing that style. And the Midwest has always been really, really creative as far as a lot of lyrical patterns with bone and different things like that. And I'm just wondering about your influence of hip hop and stuff like that. Has the are you isolated out there? Do you cut with other people? And then also, would you say that the Midwest kind of styles, rap styles, and stuff like that influence you?
Yeah, definitely. So I need to get out and cut with some people more. We got like DJ Deception in St. Louis. I live in Jeff City, Missouri. So
Mm.
St. Louis is a couple hours one direction, and Kansas City is a couple hours another direction. And both those cities have some people. There's a scratcher KC chapter. My dude High Noon does some stuff. He books a lot of dope
Oh,
turntables.
Infinity Faders, right? Yeah, I interviewed him for TTM Chat years ago.
Yeah, he's super
That
cool.
he just closed the Infinity Faders.
Yeah, he did. He does a lot of shows in Kansas City and books some dope turntablists out there. And he does some. I've done some like we got together at his house a few times and done some scratch sessions with some dudes, and I want to do that stuff more, man. I want to get out and connect with more people for sure. So I'm kind of in the middle of Missouri. Like I don't even know if there's any scratchers in my particular city, so I'm like a couple hours
Mhm.
away from anybody that I know. But but yeah, gotta stay connected. And yeah, I'd say definitely Midwest hip hop. Like I definitely like a double time. Like you're asking me kind of tempos. Like so, I like drum and bass. I like breaks. Like electro 120, 140 that area.
Mhm.
But I also like halftime. I like kind of like slow 70, 60 to like 80 BPM halftime. Like
Mhm.
trap, hip hop. Kansas City. That's where I lived for a long time. We got Tech Nine and Cess Crew. They're amazing. So there's a lot of like chopper. Kansas City is known for that chopper style of like super fast double time raps, and I like that definitely. I would say that rhythm style is definitely like influenced me for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I know because like East Coast since East Coast kind of just started doing double time rapping like when Jay-Z started kind of cross pollinating with the South and things like that. I mean obviously JJ Fad and people were rapping over electro and stuff like that way back, but it was still more most East Coast people still they don't have a lot of double time cuts and a lot of electro cuts. That's why California cats can just murder East Coast cats. And
Yeah.
that's what I was curious about, you being in the middle there and because the Midwest is, even Chicago and so many I'm originally from Milwaukee. John Swan is too. John Swan's we're both from Milwaukee, even though he lives in New York now. But it's just that there's just so many cool patterns in the Midwest and like, Tech Nine being, is such a, amazing rapper. He's definitely one of my top five of all times because, it's really more for me, it's more about the patterns, like who's
Yeah.
brought the most patterns and different styles to the game because you can say dope stuff or dope stuff, but if you're using somebody else's pattern to say something cool, that's cool. But it's cool. I think it's cooler when it's like you're actually bringing new patterns to the table.
Definitely, yeah. I like Tech Nine for that reason. Like he doesn't just rap fast; he is creative with how he puts his rhythms together, and he figures out new ways to bring his double time rap into like different places creatively with his rhythm. So I appreciate that about him a lot.
And what do you feel about the crab stuff? Because remember, there was a whole I don't know, because like when people first started crabbing, everybody started doing it, and then people, I'm not against it. I'm not against crabs or twiddles. I do a lot of twiddling, and I've cut down on my twiddling over the years, but a lot of people hate it. They're like, oh, that's cheating. I hate crabs. I hate twiddles. I'm just curious your stance on it.
Yeah, that's a good question because I was saying earlier I got really good at I not even get really good, but like I thought I was really good crabs on this side, and I can still do crabs with just three fingers, not the four finger. Um, but I do think it's all about your goals. Like if it sounds dope and you're like enjoying it, then I'm on board with it. Like I'm not gonna hate on anybody's style or what they do. Personally, I haven't gotten into practicing crabs on this side just because it's not that musical
Mhm.
and like because like if you want to like I like to add scratch. I like to think about scratching and using it for songwriting and like making
Mhm.
beats, like drum scratches and like chopping up words like phrases, and scratching like musical bits and like thinking about scratches as instruments.
Mhm.
And the crab isn't just it's not that effective. It's not that
Mhm.
useful in terms of like making musical patterns. So I just haven't
It's kind of
practiced.
more of an effect, right? Like kind of like a drum roll or because you can have a song that's all drum rolls, but then it's like if it's just all drum rolls, it kind of, it would
Yeah,
have like it be more like a fill where it's like, oh, look, some patterns happening and oh, the fill's happening at the end of the phrase or in the middle of the phrase somewhere or something like that. But yeah,
yeah,
I totally feel you. And because but what's interesting too is that some people can actually do like a I can't do it. I do, two clickers in the twiddle technique, but I've never been able to do like three clicks with crabbing. Some people can actually be like what with three fingers. I can't. I want to learn how to do that, but I don't know if
yeah.
I can try that.
I have this, yeah, I have tried a little bit, and I have this theory, right? Like, you could potentially, and this is a theory, I haven't done it, but it would take time. But you could potentially use crabbing, all four fingers even, to do all your transforms and do patterns. You know what I mean? Like two forward, two back. You go three forward, one back. Like you could do all kind of different transform patterns with crabs. Like, and it could open you up to like transforming really fast,
Mhm.
and which would be super dope. So I do think that we can. I think there's that crabs may have more potential than what people do. Just like do it real fast. Um, and sometimes they sound really dope, and sometimes they just sound messy. So
Yeah.
it's all about the sound. Like Qbert actually said this one time on QSU. I thought it was hilarious. He's like, if you were a baby inside of like a womb and you heard the sounds of your own scratching, would you want to like come out and live in that world? And he's like, I always want to make scratches that would make me want to like come out and live in this world that I'm making this
Mm.
scratch sound. I'm like, oh, that's dope. I like that. So record it, like listen back. Is it sound dope? Then I'm for it. If it doesn't, then it depends on like where you are. Are you practicing, trying to get better, and you're just practicing and posting a video to like get feedback on your practice, then ask specific questions. But if you're like rocking in front of the crowd and you're doing some hot mess crabs just to like be flashy and show off and try to impress people, then I'm probably not going to be feeling it that much.
The same time, the height of the crabs, that was when everybody had the people had the little hand things. Remember the finger.
Yeah, I got one of those. Yeah,
Yeah,
the little
because like back in the late '90s, it was like, oh, we all had those. They're like, oh, early 2000s, and now people aren't really, people are like, oh, whatever, nobody even gets those things. But like our generation, I think it was a whole different thing. But also on that note, did you see that new that device that somebody made? It's like a Kickstarter that just came out, and it's like a mixer, and it's instead of like a crossfader, it's like a thing where you can just kind of tap your fingers on it, and it turns it off every time you tap it. So it's like
interesting. I haven't seen that.
you can be like or you could be like you could do a crab like kind of and just go like that on it, and it turns it off. So you could cut just by it's like a different way of cut. It's a whole different mixer interface.
That's
Uh,
kind of like
I'll
how
send
I'm
you some.
starting on that sound is when I talk about that sound design stereo and I was pressing the button. That's kind of how I started. Yeah, that's kind of how it was. I don't know exactly how those buttons work, but I would say the crossfader is better.
Yeah. It's way better because I'll send you that thing because that thing is cool, but you can't really get ill with it. It's a real you could do simple stuff. But so yeah, let's move on to the portable stuff.
Yeah. I have an Omni
Oh,
and I have
dope.
a PT. Is what PT-01, is that it? Yeah,
Mhm.
the Newmark one. I haven't busted them out in a while, but I do like them. I don't think I would ever be like, oh, I'm only gonna scratch this way forever. I would never probably do that. I'll scratch on anything. Like I scratch on one of those things where you pull the lever and it spins around and says you like the alphabet. You
Mhm.
can, you can scratch that thing back and forth. Like I'll literally scratch
Oh
on anything.
yeah, the old school things. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. I'll scratch on anything, and I think portable's super fun. Like, there's something really cool about just being out in nature and like scratching outdoors, just like going wherever you want and scratching. It's super dope. I think it's a little bit more challenging for me to like pull off all the same techniques. It's definitely a different feel.
yeah, for me it is too. Yeah, for me it's very difficult. Anytime I'm in a portable, I'm like, whoa, this is difficult. Kind of similar like if you're used to playing basketball and you're used to the big basketball, and then it's like, oh, you got a girls' ball, women's ball, or you got a Nerf ball or something. It totally
Yeah,
changes
it changes. Yeah.
everything.
So
You have to
I
like you have to relearn.
yeah, definitely, yeah. Which I think is cool. Like, I think it can help you improve your skills. Like I said, I'm all about being flexible and having control and being able to do what you want. So I think it can only make you better to try to scratch on different stuff.
Yeah, and it'd be cool too if portables started coming out that had bigger like we could put a full 12-inch on it. because I think part of the difference between the size of the diameter of the record, I feel like it definitely affects what you can do, because if you're used to like a whole record and then you're used to just being like, oh, I'm used to going this far and going with the art, because most people aren't scratching in the middle of the if they have a 12-inch record, they're not usually scratching in the middle, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, close to the tape. I mean, close to the sticker. You know,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the
scratching
yeah.
more on the outside, you know what I'm saying? So then it's like if you have a portable, then you're basically scratching, closer to the sticker. But I really want to get one of those, I forgot what it's called, the S something, the thing that hypnotized from Scratch Society. I don't know if you ever battled him. Did you ever battle him in the Qbert battles?
I think he was. He was definitely on it. That's where we met. We met on QSU. Yeah, yeah. He had
Yeah.
some. He was like when I first joined, I was like, this dude is dope. I want to be as good as him one day.
Yeah. And he's killing it now with the little. I'm 100% about to get one of those, the little digital one where it's like this big. It's like the size of a hard drive, and
Mhm.
it's got the just a it's just a digital scratching. It's got the crossfader on it, and then
Yeah, that looks dope. Yeah, I want one of those.
it's sick.
Put it in my back pocket, just carry around everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, the size is super dope. I love that dude.
And let's talk about your production. Do you before we get into your just general production, do you do scratch production, like making beats, with elements from scratching, or are you strictly regular production and sometimes adding cuts on it? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been kind of like exploring different avenues, going through a production identity crisis, if you will, just
Mm.
experiment with different things. But I love using scratching as an element,
Mm.
and so I have a song I haven't released it yet. It's called the Tip Song, and there's an element of the song that's just like a scratch groove, and it's also got snare scratches in it. So I like to I'm getting more into it. I like to create musical elements with actual scratching, like rhythms and drums, and like building tracks with scratching. Yeah, definitely. And right now I'm working on a live show, which I'm going to use a loop station. So I'm building a bunch of tracks and loops, and going to do scratch.
Physical loop station or a digital one?
A physical, so yeah, RC 505, if you know
Mm.
about that. Yeah. So I'm gonna building a bunch of like tracks and loops to put on there. I actually got some people playing some instruments to make the loops and stuff, so I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, because like I love the scratching and the rapping. I love production, but I'm trying to focus more on the scratching and the rapping. So I'm actually doing more collabs and like getting parts from people and putting together my looper to like make beats. And I've been collaborating with my partner Heather on making some beats. So yeah, it's gonna be dope. So it's gonna be a bunch of loops to scratch to, rap to live. I got some songs and also gonna do some freestyles.
Oh, dope. And do you sing as well or just rap?
Yeah, I'm a beginner with singer, but yeah, but I'm learning. I'm doing a little bit of singing. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
getting
dope,
better at
dope,
it.
dope. Now,
Yeah,
can you do this? This is what I've been trying to practice on, and I don't see people doing it. I see people juggling and rapping. I mean, scratching and rapping. Like, I'm sorry, backspinning and rapping. Like, J Live. He does that, and Edan too. Edan will backspin and be rapping at the same time, which is a lot simpler than obviously juggling or scratch drumming and rapping at the same time. And I just saw this one guy, do some juggles and rapping at the same time over the beat. I'm like, that's so sick. I want to
yeah,
get into that. But what I never see though is scratch drumming and rapping at the same time. And I've been trying to learn, three MCs and one DJ, the Mix Master Mike song, you know,
yeah.
Mix Master Mike Rhythm Easy. And then, I can freestyle a little bit over it, but, it's really hard to rap and scratch drum at the same time. And I don't know if you've ever tried that.
Yeah, yeah. Man, it's not ready to bust out to the public, but I definitely like just do like a kick snare pattern. Like
Yeah.
just getting that going and practicing freestyling over that and doing some different rhythms, and super hard. Yeah, um, but I think it's
Really
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, I think it's a dope thing. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I think that's something dope to work into a live show if I can get that down.
Yeah, it's a whole unexplored realm. Like there's so much that's, and even like I noticed too, like even rap albums with turntablist beats, because the turntablists have gone this way, the rappers are gone this way, everybody's gone their different ways. And outside of that Mixmaster Mike Beastie Boys song, I can't even really think of songs that, there's only a small number of songs that are actually scratch based outside of the old 80s stuff that was more like, maybe a Run DMC track where it's actual backspinning and people rapping on it, not the old, stuff like that. But I mean more like a scratch-based song and somebody's rapping on it. There's not a lot of collabs. You don't see, turntablists, two turntablists scratching and then a rapper, with them. Everything is, sort of virgin. I think for the future, all these things
Yeah,
will come back
that's
together.
like that's like one of the main purposes of my live show is to like create this space where we can come together and jam. So I want other people to jam with me when I do it, other turntablists, other vocalists, other musicians, because I just love that, and I do want to bring more unity, more bridges, building bridges between different ways of expressing, and just like creating a dope, fun party where people can just fucking get down. uh,
And do and do you bring other instruments into it? Like, do you play piano as well in your sets, or?
yeah, so I'm just building. Right now, I'm focused on just the scratching and the rapping,
Mhm.
but in the future, I plan on bringing more instruments because I do play the piano a little bit and bringing in other instruments. But I'm like trying to make myself focus on the scratching and the rapping and like make that the foundation and
Mhm.
get like super because those are my strengths and get like super dope at that, build a set at that, and then later add on more and more because I want to get a keytar. That's like one of my goals is to get a keytar and add that to it.
Well, dope. Yeah, I got a key. My mom got me a Yamaha. What is it? It's red. I forgot what model name it is, but from the 80s. It was actually at Macy's back in the day. It was at in the 80s. It was like Macy's. I was like 8 or something. And but yeah, keytars are so dope. And what about button pushing? Are
Yeah,
you?
no, I currently so I need a new DJ setup. Honestly, I have a TTM 57 SL, so it has these tiny little buttons. They're super hard to push. I don't use them. So this set, like this version that I'm working on right now, is going to be vinyl and loop station. So not too much button pressing. There'll be maybe some little button pressing with the loop station, but not a lot of button pressing on this. But I'm down with that. I like beat drumming, finger drumming, and stuff like
Oh,
that.
it says we got like 1 minute left in here. Any last words, anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, thank you
A
for
shout outs or anything like that? Yeah, it's about a minute left.
shoot, yeah, shout out to you. Shout out to all the scratchers out there just practicing and doing things. And big shout out to you mentioned Vec. I've learned a lot from Vec, so I want to shout out to Vec for just doing cool things. And
Your website link too?
yeah, I got a website ZSonic.party, and that's a ZSONIC.party party, and God, it looks pretty dope. I just updated it.
All right, man. Thanks so much, man. This has been, serious talk. This is probably my favorite chat about all the chats I've done.
Oh wow, I really appreciate
Yeah,
that. Yeah, really fun for me. I appreciate you having
definitely.
me.
All right, man. All right, get up with you, man.
All right, cool.
All
Peace.
right, all right. All right, catch you there. Peace.